Hello everyone and welcome back to Asian Nagash, which channel dedicated to Sigmar. And in this video it's going to be my why play Ogor Mawtribes for Age of Sigmar Destruction. Now firstly, before I start, I just want to say that I hope everyone's alright in the world in this very challenging time, and hopefully you guys can sort of try and take a break from the real world by just focusing on even the more horrific atrocities that happen in the world of Warhammer. Okay. So to start with, for these guys, like I say, this is a why play video, so it's basically going to be a summary of the Ogor Mawtribes, a little bit about their lore, their strengths, their weaknesses, and ultimately in the end, if you're thinking about playing them, hopefully this will give you an answer to see if the army is for you or if it is not. Okay, so firstly, the first thing I have to say for the Ogor Mawtribes is do you like food, because these guys absolutely love it and they can't stop eating. They were known as the Ogre Kingdoms in Warhammer Fantasy, and that's where sort of like more commonly they've been known, where they worship the Great Maw, which essentially is a massive mouth that was in, I think, is it the Darklands? Something like that in Warhammer Fantasy. Basically, in a big barren wasteland, there was this massive maw mouth in the ground that was actually came down from a comet from the sky, made a crater, and then there's this massive, jagged mouth with lots of spikes and stuff who the ogres threw themselves into and other captives. So that's essentially who they were back in Warhammer Fantasy. Now in Age of Sigmar, they worship the destruction god Gorkamorka, which is more commonly known as the Greenskins god, you know, for like orcs and goblins, or now we know, like, you know, Gloomspike Git, you know, Bone Splitters, Iron Jaws, but now actually the ogres worship that as well, and that's been very much cemented in the new battle tome. So what's also interesting about that is it also comes into the Ogor Mawtribes and talks about their sort of origins. So like I said, we all know them for like Ogre Kingdoms from Warhammer Fantasy, but take that aside, it's completely changed now. So in Age of Sigmar, how they actually came about was quite interesting. I had to read this a couple of times in the battle zone just to make sure I was reading it right. So essentially they come from directly from Gorkamorka, as essentially Gorkamorka is by now like the only god of destruction, or that's very much how it's portrayed. And back in the Age of Myth, he used to take big chunks out of the mortal realms. Essentially a god biting into these constant spanning size realms and just basically just bite into the earth. And when he left these massive craters behind, when he would bite into them, deep inside these craters, that is where the ogres first originated. So they even crawled out of things, basically the pools that are left over from his saliva and mucus and, you know, like bodily fluids from that biting into the earth. That's basically where these ogres came from. So they are like a manifestation of Gorkamorka, and that's very much how they see themselves, like that, and they sort of wear it as a badge of honour, if you like. And now what the like Ogor Mawtribes, what they believe is that one day Gorkamorka will come and he will eat the realms, and it was actually the job of the Ogor Mawtribes to soften it up good for their god, essentially. And it's quite interesting how they do this. So if you look at things in their battle tomes, the Ogor Mawtribes, when they sort of attack and expand, and firstly, just to say about destruction compared to the other Grand Lancers, I haven't really covered too much on destruction in these why play videos. And essentially, when you have all these other armies from, you know, like order and, you know, chaos and death, all very much have a purpose, destruction's mainly just there for a laugh and just have a good time and just to do a lot of bashing around and smashing. So how these Ogor Mawtribes particularly like to bash and smash is, if you looked at it from, you know, Google Earth almost, or a bird's eye view, they do like I think they call like more circles. So they like raid in a circle, and then the circle slowly expands and expands. So it looks like it's giant bites into the earth that their destructive paths have crossed. And then when they've gathered enough, you know, shinies, so we're talking treasure, gold, all that sort of things, but in particularly for the ogres, because they love eating. And if I haven't mentioned that enough, they just can't stop. As soon as they consumed whatever's in front of them, the food, they are just thinking about the next meal. Not so much as in terms of like Tyranids just continuously eat biomass, but ogres are pretty much the closest thing to that. Basically, their stomachs never get full in that sense, and that's why they very much care for their gut. So anyway, like I said, when they've gathered all these treasures and food and everything else back to their strongholds, as they may seem like quite marauding, Ogor Mawtribes, particularly the Gutbusters, are more, they do have like a fort where they sort of expand upon. They bring everything back to that stronghold, and the way how the Battle Tome describes this is essentially they have like, they put everything in a cooking pot, they have something like a big orgy, they produce more ogres, and then like a realm portal expands, and then they travel through that to create more destruction and another like more path through there, which sounds very weird, but this is all sort of explained in a very small paragraph text from the Battle Tome, so I'm doing my best to try and understand that. But yeah, ogres having orgies, what's not to like about that one, I suppose? So that's essentially the Ogor Mawtribes, and that's like the Gutbusters mainly. You've also got the Beastclaw Raiders, which are the ogres who are riding the big monsters like the Thunder Tusk, the Stonehorn, and the Mournfang packs. Also things like the Yetis, the Icebrow Hunter, I believe it's called, and then the Saber Tusk, you know, like their kitty cats. That's, I believe that's all the guys for the Beastclaw Raiders, I believe so. So essentially for them, they basically have a massive blizzard chasing after them the whole time. If they stop in one place for too long, they'll get overtaken by this blizzard and it will essentially freeze them to death. And what this means is they actually bring, you know, like the forces of winter through this horrendous sort of like, you know, Ice Age sort of epic coldness with them to battle, and you can see it transferred. There's also like it can do mortal wounds to the enemy. It was quite cool. It's all very nicely transferred there. That's why a lot of the time when you see Beastclaw Raiders, they'll have snow bases and all that sort of thing. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but that's just where it's come from. You can interpret the Everwinter in other ways. You know, you can have like an ever creeping jungle, something like that, just to give it a bit more character to fit your armies if you like to. But yeah, that's essentially them. They do work together, and you know, like you do also have things like man-eaters, or a more mercenary base, ogres, and there's a lot more to them than just, you know, a big fat man with a big club. That's essentially what they are, but there is more to them than that. But yeah, so that's a little bit about their lore, a little bit of a summary, a very quick one. But you know, like the Battle Tome does go on and on and on, and I will go further into that when I do cover Ogor Mawtribes in a big army series at some point in the future. Okay, so now let's talk about the army itself and sort of the strengths around it. So they have some nice models in their range, as filled with like, you know, large focal points for the army, lots of monsters, that sort of thing. There's no real small models in this army apart from nobblers. It's a very elite army, so where you can literally go elite monstrous infantry for your smallest models, or actual all-out monsters, or both with some nobblers chucked in for good measure. So what I'm trying to say is you can go, you know, like full Gutbusters really, and just have like ogres as your smallest guys, just like ogre buddies, I believe they're called, or gluttons. No, they're ogre gluttons. They used to be called ogre buddies. So you can have those. You can also have things like nobblers if you want to go even smaller, which are, you know, like they're goblins. And some people do say that you need to take a lot of nobblers to be the best you can be in competitive games, because essentially you can have this massive block of 60 models. Your tyrant can make them not run away to battle shock, and then it's just like a massive tar pit or massive screen you can use to help the rest of your army. And that is very good. And is that the best way to build your army for competitive play? In all honesty, it is a pretty good tactic, but I wouldn't want to, you know, paint 60 nobblers, so for me it's not the best way. So yeah, there's lots of different ways you can build it. It's all fairly elite though, and like if you go all out on the monsters, you know, literally your smallest thing are like Mournfang packs, which are unit size minimal 2, so you sort of get the idea of that. This is an army where you can literally have you know, like the brute force of an Iron Guts club hitting the enemy straight in the face in close combat, Or what I find quite interesting about the army is that you can make it a fairly good shooting army. Can you make it the best shooting army in Age of Sigmar? No, but for what would appear to be an only close combat army, you can do a surprisable amount of shooting in it, which is quite a bit of a breath of fresh air, I think. Now, but you might be thinking, right, of all this elite, monsters and infantry and everything else, surely the model count is not going to be massively great in the army. And it's a game where it's all about taking objectives, particularly in match play. So what are you going to do? The interesting thing about this is you may think that would be a big weakness about the army. It's a lack of, model count, like I say, being an elite army. However, each ogre model actually counts as 2 models for seeing who's in range of an objective. So let's say you had, let's go with Namati Thralls as an example from the Deepkin. Let's say you've got 3 Namati Thralls around an objective, 2 ogre gluttons around an objective, and it's the end of the battle round, end of the turn. So really the person with the Namati Thralls will win the Deepkin player because he's got 3, you've only got 2 being the ogre player. Now, like I say, each ogre model counts as 2 models for taking the objective, so that would actually be 4 against 3 for you being the ogre player, and you would gain the objective. So it really helps with one of their biggest weaknesses, what used to be one of their biggest weaknesses. It's really helping with that. Now you may be thinking, right, okay, but if I'm going all out monsters, with Beast Riders and everything from the Beastclaw Raiders, having 1 fucking monster count as 2 models it's good, but it's not going to, swing the balance as easy as you might think. Well, actually, a monster for your Beastclaw Raiders is going to count as 10 models for taking the objective. And it has also been noted where there are objectives where things like, monsters or, like heroes who are monsters and all that sort of thing, if they're in range of an objective, they count as being 20 models rather than 1, as it's a very, unique battle plan. If that battle plan is in play when you're playing your Ogor Mawtribes, your model will count as 20 plus the extra 10 for it being a, Ogor Mawtribe monster, if you like, taking objectives. So the enemy's not really going to get 30 models in range of that objective unless they really try. So surprisingly, it's not just that you can sort of keep up with everyone else for the lack of models you've got when it comes to taking objectives. You can sort of keep up with the other armies who've got a bit more models than you. You can also trump them in some circumstances as well, which I think is cool, and it means that you don't have to worry about it too much. Also, the cool thing about the ogres is that they basically have do an impact on the charge damage, so you don't need to worry about your lack of model count even more so, because you're going to do that extra bit of damage in the turn, even if you fluff up a lot of your attacks in the combat phase. So there's lots of good things for them there to patch up what used to be a big weakness for them, and it's not really anymore. So when we go a bit more into the book, we've got lots of different sub-allegiances you can choose from, which we come to expect with certainly the very modern Age of Sigmar battle tomes. I think the last, probably if you look at the last 6 battle tomes, they've all had sub-allegiances, if not more. And there's plenty to choose from. And the other great thing about this is that there is no Petrified Elite auto choose option in this book. So why that is great, it means that you don't have to think that you're doing the army wrong if you don't take a certain sub-allegiance. I'm really against the things like, I don't know if against is the right word, or it's just my personal preference, why I really don't like it when a battle tome has even like 6 or 7 sub-allegiances to choose from, loads, and there's just one that's automatic, take that, it's the best. The other 6, we don't know why we writ them. Take this one, it's better than the rest. You'd be doing the army wrong, you're basically wasting your own time if you take anything else. I really am against that, because I really like the idea of choice and, like having yourself lots of options, and really, when there's one auto-include, you don't have a lot of options, you just feel like you have to take it. I sort of went into this more, and I talked about the Bone Reapers, because I think they have a lot more options to choose from than just the Petra Elite. But anyway, I digress. The nice thing about the ogres is you're not feeling like you're forced to play the army in one way. For my own preference, when I come to looking at the more tribes and the sort of tribes you can take for the Ogres, one that I would quite like to do is called the Underguts Mawtribe, as I like the idea of having shooting in the army, and I think could be interesting because it's the one that focuses most on shooting. For example, Lead Belchers, I believe it is, they have a range of 18 inches now rather than 12, so that really helps. 12-inch range is very short in range, so 18, massive, really good. And also with the Lead Belchers, when they don't move, they make, from memory, they make D6 attacks with their shooting cannons rather than D3. So it's just giving you extra benefits, extra range, and also you're getting your because you don't need to move to get in range of the enemy as much. You're also going to be getting more attacks. So very nice, and that's something that I'd like to try out with the Ogor Mawtribes. So a frequently asked question when it comes to the ogres is, and understandably, can you mix Gutbusters and Beastclaw Raiders, or do I have to pick one or the other for when I'm making a competitive army list? And my personal honest answer I can give you when it comes to this is, if you pick and stick to one, you will have essentially more synergy in your army, which is always important. I always go on about synergy. I always say when I look at, unless there's a certain, I don't know, when you're looking at command traits and artifacts, unless you're trying to make a certain general a beat stick, I always say go for the ones that have keywords for your army in the description, so they just buff your army and give your army more synergy. I'm all about synergy. I've always explained synergy in these videos. Now, so like I say, synergy is incredibly important, and that is always going to be the case. However, what I would say to you about this is, if you like all the models and you want them in the same army, they actually work together pretty well, and surprisingly well, in all honesty. With some synergy still crossing over, so you still get that. Things like, like your butchers and all that sort of thing still being able to pass over, and slaughter masters and stuff. Like your priests and wizards. And when you can use your Gutbusters for numbers, you could use your monstrous hard-hitting power of Beastclaw Raiders combined to try and give yourself a fairly optimized, don't really want to use balance, but I use the word balance, sort of list there. Give you quite a few options. Like, for example, for me, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have underguts. So I'd have my shooting ogres, and then for when it comes to real just charging up and hitting the enemy in the face, I'd like to chuck in a couple of Stonehorns. And I think, I haven't tested that, but I think that could, in my head, that could work quite well. And even if it didn't, I could have a lot of fun with that. For sure, certainly. Now, okay, we've talked about sort of the lore and the strengths of the Ogor Mawtribes, but inevitably they do have some weaknesses. So, like I say, very honest as challenge, so we are going to go through what I believe are their biggest weaknesses. So, firstly, from a model point of view, they do have some older models that don't look awful and do still fit the theme. However, they do not look as good as some of the new Age of Sigmar models. I'm talking of things like Ogre Gluttons, Lead Belchers, all that sort of stuff. Iron Guts, I think they all look cool, but they are definitely older bundles. You only have to buy and build them to realise how big the mould lines are on some of those models. I do think, though, things like everything from the Beastclaw Raider range, in all honesty, well, I say everything from the Beastclaw Raider range, let me retract that statement, because I think everything from the Start Collecting Beastclaw Raiders Start Collecting box, essentially I think the Mournfang packs and the Stonehorn and Thundertusk kit are really nice models. And I'd say the Stonehorn model is the nicest model from the army. The newest model from the army is the new Tyrant model that came from the big Feast of Bones box set a while back. Right, okay, so that's sort of, a more, not in-game, but just general weakness, I think, of the army. But, the models still have a certain amount of charm to them, I would say. But, nevertheless, they are older models, quite a lot of them are. So when it comes to the actual army on the table, things like their general saves and mortal wounds, they don't have a very good counter to that. Some of their saves are, good if you're looking at, the big beasties. But when you're looking at things like your standard ogres, 5-up saves, that sort of thing, they're not very good at saving against mortal wounds. They don't have many mortal wound saves. They have got ways to heal the army, but not nearly as much as other armies can heal. so you will take heavy hits. The biggest counter they have to not having good saves is a lot of things in their armies have good wound counts. I believe like standard ogres have like 4 wounds, which is, you know, it's very tanky. That's essentially what they are. Not the best at saving, but they are very tanky in that term. Now, also off the top of my head, I don't think they have a attack first mechanic apart from the double ganger cloak from the Architects and the Realms. I might be wrong in that. It might slip my mind, but I don't think they have that. So, you know, that's just another thing they have less than those really competitive armies. And that also goes into the fact that they're not super competitive. You know, they're not... You know, there will be an example out there probably where they win a tournament and they do beat all the tournament winning armies that I do go on about. I think they're broken. But generally speaking, they're not going to beat those really competitive tournament armies. But mainly that's just because the Ogor Mawtribes, in my honest opinion, are not broken. They're not ridiculously overpowered. They are strong, they are competitive, but they are not fucking outright broken. So that is why I would say they won't be winning all those, you know, top-end tournaments, but they will be really, really good fun. And that's the main thing I really want to end this video on. So the Ogor Mawtribes, they are really fun to play, really fun to play against, like I say, because they're not ridiculously strong and just, well, not just, when I say ridiculously strong, I just mean, you know, they're not ridiculously hard to counter. You can see them, you know they are. They're going to run up and hit you in the face, and they're going to fire some cannons and stuff at you as well. So try and deal with that. If you see a Stonehorn, you know what it's going to do. You're not going to think, that Stonehorn is going to attack me, do some damage to me, I'm going to kill it, and then it's going to spawn 3 other Stonehorns. It's not going to do that. It's just going to be straightforward, like a lot of the other destruction armies, which I love. And this is an army that I bought a few sets of the Feast of Bones when it came out, and I've only worked on a couple of tester models, but I'm currently working on my Nighthorn at the minute, which have been posted. However, the Ogor Mawtribes, the lockdown still on, is an army I may go to when I've done all my Nighthorn stuff, because I think it's an army that's going to be really fun. The colour scheme I got for it is almost like a ketchup and mustard. It's like red and yellow, so it's like just bright and vibrant, and I quite like the idea of my guys basically being, you know, meat hunters. They go around, they sort of like sell meat on, you know, I don't know, pubs and meat festivals and all that stuff. I don't know, could be a load of fun. But yeah, that's essentially what I want to end it on. I just want to say the Ogor Mawtribes is a really fun army. Hopefully this has helped you decide if you'd like to go for the army or not. Again, admittedly, this isn't one of my longest videos, but that's just because I'll cover this more in depth at some point in the future, and I sort of wanted to just try and streamline it a little bit to you guys, and I really hope you enjoy it. And if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. That does massively help me. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you and sort of help you with any ideas you got for an army. For sure. I want to give a massive shout out to my Patreons who do an awesome job and allow me to make as much content for the channel as possible. And thank you for the continued support. And that's pretty much it, guys. So stay safe out there, continue to wash your hands, stay inside, all that sort of stuff. It really does save lives. And until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.